freaking first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your Sunday recap for a very busy weekend in golf. We had a National Open, an international team event, the end of a season, and now a 7-year winning drought snapped. We're going to get to all of that and more. Joining me to break it all down, Mark Immelman is here. Hello, Mark.
How's it, boys? Yeah, it was exciting golf stuff, given that, there hasn't been much going on, and all of a sudden, it's like I was drinking from the fire hose watching TV this morning. It was cool.
Yeah, lots of stuff to cover, and it lasted all day long thanks to time zones. KP is here. Hello, Kyle.
Our podcast should be sponsored by time zones.
Big time zone. Yeah. Who do we get in touch with? Geneva? Do we just contact Geneva? They'll help us out.
Well, we've got all three covered with us three, right? We Eastern and Central and Pacific right now.
Yeah.
We need somebody from the mountain time to really, to
call in. Today was awesome. It's rare that you get a situation in which the PGA Tour event is like the least one that people are looking forward to. And I think today it was like, you could argue it was third, fourth on the list behind Irish, certainly Solheim, Rahm winning LIV Chicago, and then Patton Kizzire winning tonight. So yeah, it was a like wall to wall from the time that we all got up until basically 5 minutes ago. There's been golf going on.
Yeah, indeed. Let's take them chronologically here, and we will start in Europe for the Irish Open. And Rory McIlroy, at times on the second 9 at Royal County Down, had a 3, even a 4-shot lead, but he comes up short again, Mark. There's a couple of things here. One, he 3 putts from 25 feet on the 17th hole to make a bogey. And he has a look on the 18th hole from about 10 feet for eagle to get himself into a playoff. That does not drop for him. And then Rory would go on to make a comment afterwards saying, a lot of these late tournament situations have not gone his way lately.
Yeah, and then you just think about the fact that he's playing at a place that's only about 100 miles or so from his house, where he grew up in Hollywood, Florida, Northern Ireland, not Florida, of course. And just I think of the pressure that he's playing under with all of the fans around there. There were throngs of people, pulling for the hometown hero. He looked incredible at one stage. Look, we have to admit that this golf course was just so difficult, and it was sort of separating the men from the boys in a way. And he looked like everything was on point. He was striking the ball beautifully. Golf nerd for just a minute here, golf swing guy. The golf swing's exiting way more left than what it had been earlier this season. And for me, that brings back that little fade shot more consistently, and he won't blast them off to the right-hand side as badly off the tee. So I felt like all that stuff was there, and I was like, surely it's got to happen. But then I'm flicking back and forth between the golf, the Solheim Cup and that, and all of a sudden I see him going up 18 and he's 1 back, whatever it was. 2 back. And I said to my wife, I'm like, can you believe it? And she's like, sadly, yes, it's sort of been that kind of year. And so it was for the Rory fans, it was heartbreaking. But I think for the European fans to watch Rasmus, finish like he did, that's got to get them buoyant for future Ryder Cups and stuff, because there's this new breed of player coming through. So look, it was a great tournament. Royal County Down is a fantastic golf course. The town is incredible. One of my favorite spots in the world. So I was glued. I really was.
Yeah, it looked amazing, Rick. I mean, Mark's right. Like and they didn't show it every tee shot, but when they did have a camera like going down the fairway, it was like, oh, it was very, very cool.
Right. That place is narrow.
Yeah, it did look like a nightmare for me. Mark's right. Like I actually wrote before I read the transcript, I said, oh, it's only been, 3 months since Rory's lost the National Open by 3-putting on the last 3 holes. And he kind of said the same thing. I mean, he wasn't as sarcastic, but it was just kind of like, here we go again. I think it's easy to say like, oh, Rory blew another one or whatever. And whatever. Like, I think Rory's career is such that the way that he wins 2-3 times a year is that he puts himself in this exact position 7 times a year. right? He's not like, if you look at the numbers, he's not an elite closer, at least statistically. Bryson's an elite closer. There are other guys that are better closers than him. His greatest skill is his consistency and putting himself in that exact position where he's either leading or within one or whatever with 2 or 3 holes to go in so many tournaments throughout the year, more than anybody else over the last 10 or 15 years. And so to me, is it disappointing that he didn't win? Of course, like, you want to win an Irish Open, especially in Northern Ireland, but is it encouraging that he's kind of seemingly back into this spot where he's putting himself in position to win after what I felt like was a 2 or 3 month stretch between the US Open and this tournament where he didn't really do that very much. I think that part, if you're him, if you're a fan of his, like, it is encouraging going into, he's still got 3 or 4 tournaments left on the European Tour this fall.
Yeah, BMW PGA Championship is next week at Wentworth, so no time for the weary if you're Rory McIlroy. He was the only man to shoot 4 rounds under par at Royal County Down. He got to 8 under. The winning score was 9 under for Rasmus Hojgaard. And Mark, I'll bounce this back to you because you mentioned it, and this was just a flurry late. He chipped in twice on the second 9. He made birdies on 16, 17, and 18, and now both of the Hojgaard brothers have kind of attached themselves to Rory McIlroy as of late. Remember, it was the DP World Tour Championship last year where Nicolai won the tournament. Rory won the year-long race. So the Hojgaards are, they can handle Rory a little bit.
Look, the two of them are great. When I watched the both of them play together in New Orleans earlier this season in the Zurich Classic, I was glued. I mean, they're identical. You can barely tell them apart, but you can tell the golf swings. And I will say this, I'll probably be shot down, but of the two, Nicolai appears more decorated. But to me, Rasmus just looked like he had a little bit more in the golf swing. It's a bit more fluid. There's a lot more flow to him, I would say. And he was kind of the star coming out. Then Nicolai took over, and it's just cool to see how the two of them are spurring each other on, and even more so this bond that they have. And I'm, we're in the midst of team competition because here in a few short days it's the President's Cup, and we've just had the Solheim Cup. I think this is a budding European Ryder Cup combination there to be very stout. So look, he did some yeoman's work coming down the stretch there. That course isn't easy. But I've been there for British amateurs and I've been there for big events. And it's the kind of place where it's just so difficult that if you happen to get in, even though 18's a par 5, you kind of have the odds in your favor. And when he birdied the last 3 holes, I was like, this is going to be enough. Sadly, it's going to be enough. Well, not sadly, but, if you're a Rory fan, sadly. And in the end, it was. But kudos to him because he played great. And typically, the guy who has the sprint, who has the finishing kick, is going to win. And he proved that once again. It came to fruition.
And KP, we could put a bow on it with this because I'll harken back to Rome. And remember, it was Nicolai on the team. Rasmus was there. I don't know what his official title was. He was around. He was in the team room. He was, whatever he was doing, I don't know what it was. Yeah, I could not tell them apart. And I also imagine what it's like to watch your brother be in that moment, knowing how close you were to getting your tour card, for you thinking that, hey, maybe I should be in this spot. Rasmus has had an unbelievable year, right? He is going to punch his ticket to the PGA Tour. We're going to be seeing a lot more of him.
Yeah, he has. And I'm glad Mark mentioned that he was the better Hojgaard. I guess that was 3 or 4 years ago. And then it kind of flipped, and it's to me, it's getting obviously closer now. I mean, this is probably the best win he's had in his career. I went back and looked very briefly, and it just stood out as the biggest, at least name event that he's won. I think the Ryder Cup conversation is super interesting because you've got the Justin Roses that are 44, 45 that are not going to be there anymore. Now that team last time didn't have as many of those guys because they had kind of already ejected themselves by going to LIV, but there were still some older guys on that team that are not going to be there. That Rasmus is for sure going to be in that conversation. And that's a cool dynamic for the European team to have brothers. Could be a really interesting pairing. Never too soon to be talking about Ryder Cup pairings. I'm excited for the European team. I don't know if I'm excited for the US, but for the European team, it's very cool.
The strange thing, Kyle, is that they're coached by the same guy in Soren Hansen, who was a wonderful swinger of the golf club back in the day from the European Tour. And you got these two brothers that are kind of lifting each other, the rising tide raising both boats. And then you got the same coach, and he deals with them perfectly. And you watch them, they practice next to each other on the range. And it's, if they're playing at the same sort of time, it's practice rounds together. Oftentimes, sibling rivalry is a thing, but it looks like they're quite prepared to take a backseat to the other one, which is weird. So you got these two stud golfers that are awfully humble, same coach, approach the games kind of differently, but yet the same. It is fun to watch, and I feel like I'm really enamored now. And now that he's had this big win, to your point, I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds, because Nikolai is not going to back down. That's for sure.
And to Rick's point, Rasmus is, I believe he's second in the race to Dubai. So he is, I think, almost no matter what he does the rest of the way, going to be in the top 10 of guys that are not already on the PGA Tour and get a tour card for next year.
Yeah. Get used to finding ticks between them or whatever it is, because we're going to have to tell them apart for the foreseeable future. Let's turn our attention to the Solheim Cup. And KP, for the first time since 2017, the United States, by their lonesome, have that Solheim Cup. It was a 15.5 to 12.5 victory for Stacey Lewis and her squad. They get the job done on home soil.
Yeah, and it wasn't, you look at, if you didn't watch and you just look at the scoreboard, the leaderboard, whatever it's called, you'd be like, oh, US nice kind of wins handily. They did not win handily. It got really dicey late. And that's a great thing. I mean, people are tweeting about this, but that's the great thing about these team events is it always, even if it's not like even if the eventual scoreboard is not really that close, it always feels like, well, one shot goes this way and then that match goes that way. Like it always feels nerve-wracking. Always. Like I think the only team event I've ever watched that didn't feel nerve-wracking was that the New York President's Cup. What year was that? 2017?
I think 17.
Was that when it was like 20 to 10 or something like that?
It was so bad. I was on the radio call. We were pulling for the President's Cup International guys to win a match on Saturday afternoon to keep the thing relevant.
Exactly.
Sunday. That's how bad it was.
Exactly. They almost, the US almost ended it on Saturday afternoon. And but other than that, like if it's remotely close, it feels like, it could get dicey. And I thought the US had some players that, I mean, this is crazy. Nelly Korda's never won a Solheim Cup. Mm-hmm. She's 1-3. So they have a bunch of young players that had not been in the position of like, hey, let's go win this thing. And I thought it was cool that they did it. Lauren Coughlin was great. Lily Vu, the last shot that she hit into 18 was sick to win the Solheim Cup. I mean, it was awesome. It was an amazing shot. So it was super fun to watch. I loved it. Yeah, it was great. And I think that the US team is really interesting because they're very young and I think they could be good for a long time.
By Solheim Cup standards, Mark, 15.5, 12.5 is an absolute blowout. This is only the second time since 2013 in which this has been decided by more than 2 points. So this has been an incredibly close, entertaining, and competitive international competition that we have gotten, and this lived up to it again this year.
Okay, I'm embarrassed to admit that this is the first Solheim Cup that I've honestly sat down to watch a whole bunch. Now, maybe it's because my oldest daughter is now more into golf and we're paying attention to this kind of stuff at the ladies level. But I just think the whole thing was great. I thought the golf course, RTJ, the setup was awesome. There was just enough rough to get you into trouble and just enough firmness for the ball to roll. By the same account, there were lots of birdies made. And I thought both captains, they did nice jobs. Look, Stacey Lewis is legendary in how her mind works. She always has been. And she proved that by her captaincy and how she stacked the team and how she set them out. Now they split up groups for alternate shot and for four balls and such. The only thing that was fascinating to me as it pertains to match play, because you kind of get players that are just like match play wizards, aficionados. They just play the format of the game well. Like you think of a Sergio or an Ian Poulter or Lee Westwood. I mean, these are all heroes, but they're ones popping to mind. And Leona Maguire is one of those. And I was struck that Suzanne Pedersen would have her on the bench for a number of games, which was odd. And then in the end, she did come through for a point. But to what you guys were saying, I mean, it looked like a blowout early. And then all of a sudden, I look at the leaderboard and I'm like, wow, this thing's nip and tuck. Even though the US were only a point and a half away from securing the cup. And it was sort of on the knife edge for a long, long time. It could have gone either way. And in the end, yeah, Kyle, that shot that Lilia hit was tremendous. I would even go further than that to say to put the ball in play off the tee like she did, because that fairway edges you toward the right-hand side because of the bunker down the left. And it's so easy just to peel one off to the right. And then that green, the way it sits, you're coming in from a weird angle. And to hit the tee shot where she did, and then to basically take speed off an approach shot, because under pressure, you want to go faster, right? And she was able to gear down and feather this thing in there, land it short, skip it up there to a few feet. That was clutch. And I was like, wow, man, I got to watch this stuff more often.
Well, even the putt on the hole before, Mark, on 17, I can't remember how long it was. I looked up and saw it, and it looked 20 feet. I don't know. It was pretty far, 15 feet maybe. I thought that was impressive. The thing that struck me, Rick, and it's always true of these team events, whether it's President's Cup, Ryder Cup, Solheim Cup, whatever you want to, Walker Cup, every single shot, because of the way that they're structured, in the same way that I think 72 holes is a perfect individual stroke play number of holes, I think 28 points in team events is awesome. Or I guess President's Cup is 30 or anything around there. It's just it keeps everything really close, and it makes every single shot feel consequential. Like if it's Friday afternoon on the PGA Tour and somebody misses a fairway on the third hole, you're not like, oh man, you don't think anything. You're just like, oh, I missed a fairway on the third hole. In the Solheim Cup or the Ryder Cup or the President's Cup, you're like, oh my God, like every shot you can almost just like feel the weight of it, because on Sunday you might need a half point, which the US did to win the event. And so I love that aspect and that truth about these team events. I think it makes them really, really interesting to follow from start to finish.
I'm nitpicking here, Rick, but and maybe it's a recency bias, but you talk about half points. I came into the room and I'm watching Maya Stark, who's on the backside of 18 green. Then the next thing I turn around, she's got like 15 feet back up the hill for par to keep the thing alive.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, the last thing you want for anybody is to be the person that three-putted last for your team not to win. And you speak about clutch putts made. I mean, she buried that thing right in the heart.
It was sick.
It really was cool.
I think they just showed it on Golf Channel. No, not yet, but they're getting close to showing it on the Golf Channel right now. KP, I want to bounce this back to you real quick, because what we have seen, while it feels very close late, is that the last couple of these team events often get decided. I don't want to say decided, but often the first day means so much. So on Friday in the first session, US wins 3-1. They do the same in the afternoon session. So they are up 6-2. After that, 2-2 on Saturday morning, 2-2 on Saturday afternoon, and the Europeans win 6.5 to 5.5 on Sunday. Kind of a similar story in Rome for the Ryder Cup. The US team split Sunday singles. They split the last the Saturday sessions. It was just that both of them both losing squads got off to really slow starts. And while we sit here and think, okay, it's going to come down to Sunday singles, it's like having that juice out of the gate is so critical to start putting flags on the board early.
Yeah, and I think a couple things about this. The first thing is that when you're evenly matched, like these teams usually are, it's very difficult to have a lot of variance in singles, right? Because there's just more golf shots, and so because of that, you gravitate toward the median, which for a lot of these teams is like 6.6 or 6.5, 5.5 or whatever. And so I think what it means, Rick, is it makes either Friday or Saturday and the strategy behind pairings and the way you attack another team or the golf course monument. I mean, that's why you hear it preached from the European side, at least for the Ryder Cup. I know Justin Ray was involved on the American side for the Solheim Cup. I don't know much about the European side on the Solheim Cup, but you hear these things like, you're like, oh, the analytics boys are the data. And it's like, no, the tiny edges you can get on Thursday, on the first 2 days, Friday, Saturday, in those alternate shot or best, whatever, is those actually really matter come Sunday, because if you gain that 1 or 2 point edge, it makes it just so tough for teams that are evenly matched to separate on a Sunday.
Well, if I may just build on that real fast, Rick, that's why people talk about the nerves of playing in this stuff, because look, you're representing your country and that's where it ends. And it's a point or no points or half a point on the line. And from Thursday morning at every single one of these, you see these players look like cats on hot tin roofs. I mean, they're like, you can see the nerves in their faces because they know, just because of the brevity of match play and because of the fact that you just miss a few putts or you hit one bad shot, that could be it, because you don't have the luxury of playing 72 holes and making a mistake or two and then just lurking around the place. There's this instantaneous nature about match play, which is so cool, and it makes every shot count so much. And that's why from the very first tee shot on the very first morning, it's meaningful. And that adds to me to the emotionality of a sport that can be quite binary at times,
2026, we're headed to the Netherlands, which is going to be sick. It'll be the first time that the Netherlands has ever hosted a Solheim or a Ryder Cup. So we are going to make a little bit of history in a few years. Jon Rahm just completed his first year on LIV Golf, and he completes it by winning their individual title. And in fact, KP, the leaderboard for Chicago almost mirrored the overall season standings here. So this is the Chicago leaderboard. Rahm beats Joaquin Niemann, Sergio Garcia, and Terrell Hatton 1 through 4. Here's the overall season standings. Jon Rahm beats Joaquin Niemann, Sergio Garcia, and Terrell Hatton finishes 4th.
Yeah, reports of Jon Rahm's demise were greatly exaggerated, it appears. I think, I was actually looking at his numbers the other day, and he's been third best in the world in terms of strokes gained in 2024, which just sort of shocked me. Right, because you think about him, how bad he's, and that doesn't like abdicate him of, he's been bad at the majors, and he seems weird, whatever. But I think if you just look at his statistics and his finishes, it's like, he's actually had a pretty good year, depending on how you translate LIV and all that stuff. Yeah, like I don't know. Is it weird that he won 22 million and won the season long race and the individual championship, and like, people like, was anybody even like talking about this or what?
You got a sweet ring.
Scan that QR code.
Hey, and answer this question for me, because you talked about the stroke gained. Is this just in comparison to the fields he's playing in? Because if that's the case, it's not that impressive to me.
It's normalized. It's normalized across, like, yeah. You're right. Like, if it was just the events that he's playing in, it isn't that impressive. But it gets normalized because everybody plays each other through the majors and whatever. But I don't know. Like, I think I'm bullish on Rahm going into 2025, Rick. But like, he was like, was it like, does he take this year over last year? No. Because he won the Masters last year, it's just it's a weird deal. Like, LIV just is not, it doesn't carry any, like, if we say PGA Tour events outside the majors don't carry very much weight, LIV events carry almost no weight. It's like, well, you won 2 LIV events, you would trade those for you would trade those for like a point at the Ryder Cup, like you trade them for a lot of stuff. So it's just kind of an odd thing. But I did want to highlight the fact that he has played, I think, overall, not at the majors, but overall, better golf this year than people probably realize. He finished in the top 10 in every LIV event that he finished. Like, he withdrew from one, but every other event.
He withdrew from Houston with the toe injury. That kept him out of the U.S. Open, so he played 3 major championships. Those did not go well, but every other LIV event that he played, He finished inside the top 10, and he is seemingly going to be playing some DP World Tour events coming up because of litigation and trying to make sure that he keeps his DP World Tour status so he can play in Ryder Cup. So there's more to come on the Jon Rahm story. The other thing here, Mark, and you tee up on that as well. Joaquin Niemann, who is, had a great year, basically from January 1 to right now. It has been awesome. He turns 26 in November. Here is still one of, the few young stars that are already winning at a pretty prolific rate. He'll finish second to Jon Rahm in the standings, and he'll finish second to him this week.
Yeah, just from my point of view, to put a bow on the Jon Rahm thing, the conversation, did anybody think he wasn't going to win their Player of the Year thing? Anybody? Raise your hand if you thought someone else was going to beat him in that league.
Well, at the beginning of the year, correct. At points throughout the year, after the Masters, after the PGA, I wasn't as sure. Like he just, I don't know. Like he was so bad at those events that it did bring some like doubt into my mind. But to your point, he's so much better than everybody else in the league.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, he's one of the top 4 or 5 players in the world, whatever it is, 3. I don't know what the numbers are, but to me, it sort of seemed like, because he really wasn't that great throughout the year. Then he finishes with a flourish to win the whole thing. Now, look, that's kind of like the PGA Tour's President's Cup, the FedEx Cup. I'm getting all the cups mixed up now. Where you can be sort of decent, then suddenly win the playoffs and you're the FedEx Cup champion. So that's how it is. It's the nature of the beast. You're going to play all whatever number of tournaments they played. But the thing for me, for Jon, is just, how about a little less drama? Let your golf clubs do the talking for a little bit, because every time I turn around, if I'm seeing headlines, there's something on the go. So I'm like, Jon, you've got all this talent. Now just go and play. Just go and whip up on people like you love to, because the guy likes to win. Mm-hmm. Go do your thing. Go let your clubs speak for you, and shut up. And then let your legacy will then be defined. Now to Joaquin, 26. If anyone should be contending in major events and stuff with his skill, this is a former world's #1 amateur. It's this guy. He and Jon both. And look, I understand with Joaquin, because he mentioned to me, he goes, he was just so lonely playing over here in the United States, because the tour over here is kind of insular. Everyone travels by themselves. It's unlike Europe. So yeah, with these boys there on Team Torque or Torquay, or however they say it, he can travel with his buds, and that's kind of how they like to exist. So I get it from that point of view. But as far as him amassing big titles and stuff, which he can do. I mean, this was a kid that won at a canter at Riviera. He blitzed that golf course, which is not easy. And now he's finishing second best on the LIV Tour. No, Joaquin at 26, he should have the world in front of him and winning big events. So I don't know. Are they going to figure stuff out? Who knows? But he's got a lot of money. He's got his buddies with him. I wonder in the still of the night, if he's going, I'd like to have one of those 4 majors or players or whatever the case might be.
I mean, I think the same thing about Rahm. Question for y'all: better career, more decorated career, better resume at the end of the career, Ludwig or Niemann?
The problem is, the problem is this is the conversion rate, right?
Mm-hmm.
If Joaquin Niemann has 10 LIV victories and Ludwig has 4 PGA Tour victories,
well,
which one's better?
Well, it depends, right? If it's like the Players and the Memorial and the
right,
and I mean, Joaquin's already won Riv. He's won. How many times did he win on the tour? 2 or 3?
A couple.
He won Greenbrier, Riviera.
Was there another?
That might be all.
I think it's 2.
That's it.
Kyle, you know me, I'm inclined to go with bird in the hands worth 2 in the bush. And for Ludwig, as gifted as what he is, if there was a putting contest between the two of them, I'd pick Joaquin every day of the week. Now, Ludwig hits the thing like a god. He truly does. But Joaquin's not short. I mean, he flies at 300 something. And so I think if you're just looking at the tail of the tape, Joaquin is bigger than you think. He's slight, but he's like 6'1". Ludwig's 6'3", so he's got everything. But we're keen just the way he putts. You know, if they were playing in all the same tournaments, I'd be keen to see. I really would.
Rick,
Give me Ludwig. He's already contended at a major. He doesn't have a top 15 in any major, does he?
Oh, really?
I don't think so. Yeah, I feel like I looked it up recently, and he's been bad at majors. Maybe Masters this year.
No, yeah, he played well at the Masters. I think.
He has his best finish at a major is
Here we go. Look for the greens.
he doesn't have any. T16 at the 2023 Masters.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm changing my pick.
Well, I mean, the reason I asked that is because I think we think of Ludwig as being so much younger than somebody like Niemann, but they're essentially the same age.
Yeah, I think he's a year younger. Here's the other thing. How much I'm mid 30s. It hurts to watch Joaquin Niemann swing.
Yeah.
Ludwig's will age beautifully.
Yes.
He's got a left knee injury, big eye. Joints are not good.
I know.
It
is an interesting conversation.
The front side of a golfer in the joints, you don't want to hurt those spots, man. It is those are hard to come back from. They really are.
Niemann's spine at impact looks like this, though. I mean, it's like it's insane.
The LIV golf circuit will wrap up next week in Dallas. They will conclude with their team events. That'll be their last event of the year, and we do not have their full schedule for next year, though they've already announced their first, I believe, 3 or 4 events for 2025. We're going to turn our attention to the PGA Tour, the Procore Championship, get you an update there, recap the bets, and our fall one and done schedule. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
At CBS Sports Golazo Network, we're bringing you the game. Madness of Messi arrives! Breaking down the game.
This is unlike anything else in the world.
And changing the game.
Get it all for nil.
That means free.
Wow.
And all day long!
24/7.
And we're back. Let's go to Napa, where Patton Kizzire ran away with it. 66, 65, 67, and a lowly 70 on Sunday gets the job done. 20 under par to win the Procore Championship by 5 shots over David Lipsky. Mark, this is a man who struggled for the entirety of 2024, was outside the top 125 in FedEx Cup standings before the week started, and now he knows where he's going to be playing, maybe set that schedule up a little bit better. A career-changing week for Patton Kizzire.
Yeah, it truly was. I mean, if you want to have a poster boy for the FedEx Cup Fall Series, it was Ludwig Berg with winning last year in the RSM Classic, which propelled him to the exemption on tour, and then the 2 starts in the first 2 signature events at Pebble and at Riviera, and he parlayed that into a wonderful season. It could be Patton Kizzire right now because, like you say, he was outside the top 125, in danger of losing the card, gets some time off, has not made the playoffs, works in his game, works on the mental game with a mental sports psychologist, and comes to Napa and looks almost unbeatable, bar one mistake there on the back 9, which he quickly bounced back from with 3 birdies in the next 4. It was incredible, and almost was a throwback to a young man who came onto the tour as the former Corn Ferry Tour Player of the Year. He had won a couple times, and all of a sudden the game almost incomprehensibly fell on hard times. And here we are. He's back on top, back in the signature events, back exemption for 2 years. I mean, all smelling like roses for Patton Kizzire right now.
Yeah, steady Eddie coming down the stretch, as Mark mentioned. Birdies on 12, 13, and 15 really allowed him to separate and build a cushion where he could just kind of coast his way in without getting much pressure from the rest of the field. KP, this ends a 7-year victory drought. Patton Kizzire now 3 times a winner. He won in the fall in Mayakoba, and then I believe it was the next January he won the Sony. So he had 2 wins within 3 or 4 months of one another, and then goes 7 years without a victory.
Yeah, I mean it's a great way to start the fall. You know, we were talking before we came on about how old he is. I thought he was like 34, 35, maybe. He's 38. So it's a win at a good time in terms of they get harder to come by as you get closer to 40 and into your 40s, especially when you're not an Adam Scott or a Justin Rose. Even when you are those guys, they're hard to come by. So yeah, great win for him. I thought it was, you know, looking at the rest of the leaderboard, it was a good week for the International President's Cup team and a bad week for the U.S. team. Homa and Wyndham missed the cut. Sahith played pretty good. But then most, you know, Minwoo, Mackenzie Hughes, Corey Connors, they all played really well. So I was telling producer Josh before you guys were here, I think the President's Cup could be, I think it could be interesting. I don't trust the U.S. team, and I don't really love the U.S. team, the way it's sort of put together and how everybody's playing right now. So I think that part of it, for me, one of my takeaways from this particular event is looking ahead to 2 weeks from now and that team event.
Yeah. So just to kind of, I don't think we need to get too deep into this. David Lipsky finished solo second, Patrick Fishburne solo third, Ben Silverman, Mackenzie Hughes, and Grayson Sigg finished in a tie for fourth. Let's talk about those President's Cup results, Mark, because the international squad, Mackenzie Hughes, T4, Corey Connors, T7, Minwoo Lee got off to a really hot start, fades to a T32, but the only good representation the U.S. got was from Sahith, who in his title defense finished T7. Max Homa and Wyndham Clark missed the cut. Homa's struggles continue, and Wyndham Clark ejected himself from this golf tournament on Friday by making a bogey on 16, a double on 17, and another bogey on 18. Already had a triple earlier in the round, so I'm not necessarily sure Team USA is trending with a lot of great play at the moment.
No. And it's sort of, Rick, you're wearing the Ryder Cup cap. It feels very much like Ryder Cup last year, doesn't it? First off, as far as the international guys go, I'm really happy that they played well for Captain Ware and such, but not just because of the team, because apparently there's a contingent of international fans out there that do not like the picks whatsoever. So much so that they're coming after me on social media. I'm like, you got the wrong brother over here, by the way. And they're like, well, you guys don't want to pick the LIV people. And I'm like, you guys? Sorry, I had nothing to do with this. But all that being said, I really like the look of this team. I mean, I don't think I've been on the show since they were announced, but it's a really cool lineup. I was glad a bunch of them were playing this week. Minwoo could use the reps. He came out there, played well. And then for Mackenzie Hughes, I feel like if there was a pick that people could kind of like point fingers at, that could be the one. Everyone in the know knew he's going to be worthwhile, and he proved it now with a really sound finish. So yeah, the international's looking good. The United States guys, look, here's the reality of it. The event's close, but it's kind of far away. And I'm sure that both of them, Wyndham and Max, both got a good beat on where the game is under pressure. So they'll be working their proverbial rear ends off over the next little while to make sure they have form for when the President's Cup rolls around. And then I'm sure if they're not playing very well, you'll see them get blended in 4-ball or something like that. And the alternate shot may be different. I don't know how the golf course stacks up. I'll have to have a look at that Tuesday with you when we're out there. But yeah, it's not shaping up very well, but it does feel like for the Americans, very similar to the Ryder Cup last year.
Earlier when the captain's picks came out, I gave Mike Weir an A-. KP. I think my only criticism is I personally would have taken Cam Davis over Mackenzie Hughes. There is one way to just for Mackenzie Hughes to tell everybody, including myself, to shove it, and that's play as well as you did this week. And this is exactly what he wants to be doing. One, not only as he gets ready to go to Royal Montreal for the President's Cup, but he is still working on that FedEx Cup fall. He's 51st. So he is the top ranked fall guy in the FedEx Cup standing. So he wants to make sure he's getting into all the signature events, or at least the first couple. Mackenzie Hughes has like a lot going on right now.
Yeah, he does. And I'm mostly with you about taking Cam Davis. I do I like Mackenzie Hughes a lot. I think he's kind of a dog. I think he's kind of I don't really want to play him if I'm Xander or somebody like that, because he shouldn't beat me, but he can get kind of hot. Like he's just kind of, he would be frustrating to play, And so I'm not like gonna lose my mind over Mackenzie Hughes picking Mackenzie Hughes over Cam Davis. And I think a little valid. It's a little bit like when JT got picked last year, and then he went out and played well at Napa. You're like, hey, he's still a good player, Right. And so, I think great week for him. Good week for Corey Con. I'm really interested to see how I think we've all got the Canadian Open in our heads from last year, all the Nick Taylor stuff and everything that happened. It was an amazing event. You could argue it was the best event on the PGA Tour in 2023. So I'm really interested to see how that goes for a lot of the Canadian guys in the President's Cup. I guess next 2 weeks from now, because I think that it could be kind of awesome. Right. Like I think there's a path in which it's like a really, really cool week for somebody like a Mackenzie Hughes, somebody like a Corey Connors. And I'm just really intrigued to see what that looks like.
It's the first time for the international team that they'll be playing abroad behind the shield in all of their colors. Now they had the shield down in Royal Melbourne, but they were wearing like a mix up of colors. Now it's just pure black and gold, and there is merchandising. I understand. So having this event for the international team overseas in front of those Canadian fans who are rabid. I mean, the Canadian Opens I've done, they've been fantastic. And with the unified colors, I think is just going to be a different animal. And I'm really keen to see what it's going to be like, because at President's Cups in years past, for the international crowd, you'll see like this odd South African flag and an Australian flag and an Argentinian flag. Now there's just going to be that black and gold shield. And so I'm keen to see what that does for the team morale. But to your point, Kyle, the fans there are awesome, and it's going to be fun.
The maple syrup will be flowing at Royal Montreal. Indeed. To put a cap on the Procore, here are the three golfers that were outside the top 125 in the FedEx Cup fall standings that moved inside. Patton Kizzire, as mentioned, to number 70, David Lipsky to 101, Grayson Sigg to 112. So those guys increasing their positions for next year in a significant way. Let's recap the bets. And we had Patrick continue right where he left off from last year, having a good week, but it was UKP.
Let's go.
Almost pulled the clean sweep. Almost our very first 5 for 5. You knocked off 4 of these. USA over Europe. That was a Solheim Cup wager. Robert McIntyre finished inside the top 10. That was 2-1. Jon Rahm outright winner at LIV Chicago. That's right. And then you backed it up with a Rory McIlroy overseas Irish Open top 10 at -120. The only thing that didn't go your way was Maverick McNeely winning the Procore, but otherwise a very, very solid week.
Mav was not close either. He missed the cut. That was tough. I guess the perfect grid would be if you threw in a senior event instead of a senior tour bet. I had 2 Euro tour because I had Rory on the best bet to finish in the top 10 also, which we'll get to in a minute. But it went well for me with Bobby Mack and Jon Rahm. That was it's good to see.
Hey, Rick.
Yes.
Rick, I want to turn the tables on you. I'm looking at this, and I've got to give you a bravo, my friend. First off, you haul out Rasmus Nergaard Peterson for a top 20. Okay.
Wrong Rasmus.
Incredible. And Tristan Lawrence for an outright win. Help me with that decision. Look, he's South African, but going with Tristan there to win outright on. Tell me about
he was playing well.
He was playing great, and he was one off the lead about midway through the second round, and then Lawrence happened. And
you talk about kids who were like supposed to be the next big thing. Tristan was unbeatable as a kid down in the Cape. I mean,
really
everything. Yeah, and then something happened.
Nice. He's playing better. He's playing some sound golf. Yeah, I got the clean sweep as well. But 0 for 5 on my card as opposed to the 5 for 5. Patrick also had USA over Europe. He got the Steve Stricker top 5 wager, which is sick one. Stricker actually won the senior tour event. And then Josh, if you want to show the best bets, of course, what did Patrick do? He took his best bet over to LIV Golf, said Jon Rahm at 6-1 and wins that as well.
Okay.
Yeah, that has been a very useful wager for Patrick the last year or so. We also introduced a very special one and done for the fall that is brought to you by Supreme Golf, the world's largest tee time marketplace. And with only so few events, we decided we can't pick anybody in the FedEx top 50, and we extended our usage list from earlier this year to current. So you could not pick somebody that you already used, and it comes up with a very eclectic set of names. Josh, do we have the selections handy? Yeah, there they are. These are not names you normally see in a one and done, but
what an awful collection of performances here.
Okay,
yeah, well,
I need to ask a question because I got this text and I was actually in the Mystic Ring golf lessons and I was on a deadline. So I still had Sahith and I'm like, so I can't use Sahith when I'm texting Josh. He goes, no. And so I said, well, how about, I didn't ask him, but then like, I don't know. I didn't know if Mackenzie Hughes was qualifiable or not because I hadn't used him. I hadn't used Corey Connors. I had all these names, but I didn't know whether I could use these people or not.
You probably could have used Hughes looking back at it, but you wouldn't have been able to know that at the time.
He's coming at you soon, I'm sure then.
Yeah. So Kyle and Patrick had very good bets this week. Both had Maverick McNeely. That's $0. Mark got Mark Hubbard from a Monday qualifier. That also was worth $0.
Yeah, but you heard the story about him, right? Why Monday qualified?
Insane.
He was in a cold plunge.
He forgot to enter.
Dropped his phone or something. Yeah, forgot to enter. Forgot he did not have to Monday qualify for this event. He was in.
That's a normal sport chapter.
Most Mark Hubbard thing I think you could ever imagine because that's exactly the kind of guy that he is.
Has to Monday qualify and does, which is impressive, and then missed the cup, but that's okay. Mark
Hubbard was 65 or something, I thought.
Yeah, he did get off to a good start. Let's see what he did. Yeah, he went 67-77.
Yes. Okay. There you go.
That actually ended up being an expense. Mark, you should have just stayed home. Cost him lost money this week.
That's true.
I had Luke Clanton, 14,562, which he does not get as an amateur, but I get credit for it. Josh had Patrick Rogers, 26,100. Greg has JJ Spawn, 43,800. JJ was in the mix. He went 69, 65, 74, 72 to finish T26. So the good news is the high water mark is only $48,800 that we have to track down.
I thought it was JJ Spawn's season.
Yeah, there's still some season left. Still
True.
seven.
That's
Still seven more fall events.
Yeah, that's a good point. He'll probably play in all of them.
Is he in the Zozo?
I don't. Dude, are you kidding me? I have no idea. I don't know who's in the Zozo. I don't even know where the Zozo is.
It's in Japan.
I mean, I guess I keep getting that confused. The CJ Cup is the one they've moved around.
Yeah. Which is now
it's the Byron Nelson now. It's in Dallas. You're not in the woods.
Of course.
Yeah.
So we will continue this not next week, the President's Cup, or excuse me, not next week, which is a no PGA Tour week. Next week will be headlined by BMW PGA Championship. The week after that is the President's Cup. So we will pick this back up, the one and done that is, of course, brought to you by Supreme Golf, the world's largest tee time marketplace. We will pick that up at the Chicken Championship, the Sanderson Farms.
Yeah, baby.
Put me down for Hughes.
Put me down for, we should have to pick like 3 weeks in advance.
Put me down for Hughes.
Is Sam Burns going back? What are the chances I get Sam Burns back there? 0?
Melnati. No, but he's right. No, he made the playoffs, right? How far did he make it?
Burns was like, wait.
No, Melnati.
Oh, yeah, he won.
He made it far.
BMW.
Yeah, he made it 65th marks, or Josh said.
Okay, so
Is he eligible then or not?
Yeah, as long as you didn't use them, you can use them.
Ah, okay. But use Peter Malnati. My season was bad, but shucks.
Yeah, you didn't have to use Peter Malnati at any point.
Uh-uh.
Okay, gents. So as mentioned, Wentworth next week will headline golf. LIV will do their team event. Everybody on the PGA Tour will get a week off, and then the boys will be traveling to Royal Montreal to get themselves prepared for that event. Anything else before we get out of here?
Yeah, is Billy Horschel going to go play at Wentworth and win and then point a finger at the US team? What's
I hope so.
that happen?
That would be
awesome.
that would be sick.
Just
I would
saying.
like that.
I would too.
And then could you imagine if he does that and then Max Homa goes like 0-2-1?
Aish.
What is it? I wonder, can Billy Horschel win the race to Dubai? I guess Rory's kind of already.
Rory's so far ahead in that thing.
Yeah, I think it's like locked up at this point. We will be doing Tuesday and Thursday podcasts next week on golf-related topics. And that is all I'm willing to commit to at the moment. Because I don't know. No, we'll figure it all out. We'll have some pods out for you next week. Anything else?
Yeah, Fat Perez coming on my show. Interview next week.
Heck yeah.
Now,
So only being released like 14 days down the track, so watch out.
does he prefer to go by Fat, or does he prefer to go by a different type of nickname?
Are you saying that just for me? Well, it's either FP or Perez or Stubby. Nick Stubby. But I'm going to call him Fat just for giggles.
I do like that. It's kind of like his first name. So
I thought so. It's like I watched the movie Deadpool the other night, and the cab driver was calling him Mr. Pool.
Yeah, Mr. Pool. It makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, gents. Well, I'll see you guys next week. Pods, as usual. Producer Josh is doing all the hard work behind the scenes. Thank you very much. That's Mark Immelman. You can find him at Mark_Immelman. That's Kyle Porter. You can find him at Kyle Porter CBS. And you can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. We'll catch you next time.